Hello, my name is Ty Clymer, and I am the author of The Zumba Class and Betty and Clark, which you can find on Amazon. Today I'm going to read the first chapter of Betty and Clark. So here we go. Betty lived in a small, two-bedroom cottage-style house in the wooded countryside by herself. It had been many years since her husband had died. It was a cozy house on a small plot of land, once part of a 200-acre farm with cattle, chickens, horses, and crops, but it was mostly all sold shortly after her husband's passing. She lived a quiet, peaceful, and thrifty life since she had nothing to live off except the money she got from selling the farm and the land. Each year she grows many vegetables and picks peaches and apples from her trees. She also has some chickens for eggs and does her best to provide all she can for herself without the reliance on buying groceries except what she needs to. The nearest grocery store is 20 miles away in the closest town, and she only goes once every few months or so in her old pickup truck. She also makes a bit of pocket money from selling her fruits, vegetables, and sometimes eggs when people come to the house. Usually they were people who had known her and her husband for years and wanted to help her out. It was late fall now, and she had almost picked 3 bushels of apples from her few trees, which was great. Great news since she didn't have the best luck with her garden this year. Had gotten too hot for too long, and the bugs ate a lot. She was only able to can 2 jars of tomato sauce when she normally does 12 to 15, and only had enough cucumbers to get 3 jars of pickles out of. She was worried how she would get through the winter since she didn't have any extra to sell and didn't like to spend a lot for groceries. But then the apples came, and she found herself very busy making jars of apple butter, applesauce, drying apple slices to sell to whoever came by once she put a sign out in front. When she wasn't doing this, she was still caring for the garden. She had gotten lucky in being able to grow some lettuce, cabbage, kale, and some other vegetables to harvest, like onions and garlic, this late in the year. She rather enjoyed this life, which was quiet, but lonelier and lonelier with each passing year. Sometimes she put on old Loretta Lynn records she still had, or read from the Bible, or a story from Chicken Soup for the Soul. These had to suffice for company because she didn't own a radio, TV, or a phone and never had. At night, she rarely turned on the lights and used a lot of candles or lit a fire when the weather was too cold. By the end of October, the weather had turned cold, and she knew she had to harvest what she could of the lettuce, cabbage, and onions. She would cover the lettuce sticks in the harvest a bit and left the hearty care as it was. That night, she decided to cook a hearty care and cabbage leaf soup. As she was making the soup, it started to rain, a cold rain, and then a little later it turned into a nice, nasty ice storm that did damage to the trees, and she even lost her electricity. She had plenty of candles for light, firewood for the fireplace, and an old wood burning stove in the kitchen. She had plenty of food too, and felt completely at ease when she saw the power was out, because the bathroom light did not come on when she flipped the switch. It was at times like this she felt the most resourceful because she knew other people were never prepared or knew how to get by without power. She almost felt sorry for them and their kids, but that was the modern life all those people chose. She decided to sit on some thick blankets in front of the fire and work on the sweater jacket she was knitting for herself out of the softest yarn she could find. She knitted till she could hardly keep her eyes open any longer, and then blew out the candles throughout the house and got a pillow from the bed and wrapped herself in a blanket on top of the blankets on the wooden floor next to the fireplace and went to sleep with the sound of ice coming down. She woke up when she heard a loud crash in the early morning hours. It was still pitch black outside. She knew she had to figure out what it was, despite being in the middle of the night, being without power, and potentially having to go outside. She lit a candle near her and then went to the kitchen to get her battery powered flashlight. Then she put on her boots, opened the front door with the flashlight shining ahead. As soon as she opened the door, she saw a black pickup truck that had slammed into the tall cedar tree in the middle of her front yard. At first, she just stood there thinking, I hope the tree is okay. But then, after a couple of seconds, she thought, the driver. She started to walk towards the truck and said in a loud voice, Hello, you seem to have had a run in with my cedar. She's pretty tough, but what about you? Are you okay? No answer. As she got closer to the truck, she began to fear the worst. She shone her flashlight in the window and saw a young man with his head on the steering wheel, unconscious, with a streak of blood down one cheek. She said in a loud voice again, "Oh, good heavens! It looks like the tree won. Can you get up and let me know you are okay? You hear me?" No response and no movement. She managed to get to the driver's side door and get the door open without much effort. "You must have really hated my tree, didn't you? To hit her like this. Now, how are you going to make this all right?" She looked at him and could hear him breathing softly and put her fingers to his neck to check his pulse. As soon as her fingers touched him, he stirred and opened his eyes a little and groggily said, "Why are you touching me for? I'm trying to sleep. Just leave me alone, all of you, okay?" Then he passed out again. She let out a heavy sigh and then patted him on the back hard once or twice till he came back again. She said, "Now you listen here. You hit my precious cedar with your truck, and I came out here to check on you. So don't go telling me to leave you alone." The young man came to again. "I said leave me alone. Why is everyone set on telling me what to do? It's my life, damn it." She let out a loud sigh and said, "If you want to die here from your injuries and hypothermia, be my guest. I'll just get in my truck sometime after the roads are clear and drive into town and tell the local authorities that a young man crashed into my cedar and died from his injury a couple of days before." "What are you talking about, this mess? Let me be the first to tell you. I'm a hot mess, not just any old mess." "Well, then, bless your little heart." "Hey, don't be insulting me. I'm going to have to get out of this truck, here of mine, and have a word with you, ma'am, about how blessed I am." He then swung his leg around like he was going to get out, but he couldn't grasp why he couldn't. His seatbelt was still fastened, and he was getting pretty frustrated. "Son, you might want to take off that seatbelt." He unclicked it, and as soon as he got out of the truck, he stood up, and then right after fell to the ground flat on his face. Before he fell, she saw that he not only had blood coming from his face, but his jeans right leg was soaked in red as well. "Son, what's your name?" "Clark. Why are you asking?" "Because, Clark, if I'm going to help you and take you into my home to clean you up, I want to at least know your name." "What's your name, then? The lady who's going to help me out in my time of need," he said rather sarcastically. "Betty, like the actress Betty Wright." "You're Betty Wright? I thought she passed away or something, and even if she didn't, I thought she lived in California or something. Plus, I thought she had white hair. Your hair is like an ugly gray." "Thanks for the compliment." And I said Betty, like Betty Wright. How could you possibly think Betty Wright lived out here in the middle of nowhere? You must have done some brain damage or something. Now, do you think you can stand up?" "Maybe." "I'll be right back. I'm gonna go get my wheelbarrow." "Wheelbarrow? Yeah. Do you think I'm gonna give you a piggyback ride to in the house?" As she carefully walked to the shed where the wheelbarrow was, she couldn't help but wonder what had brought him to her front yard in an ice storm. He sounded angry and obviously resented people trying to tell him what to do. He must be running away, she thought, from his parents' responsibilities. Hard to say, really, but clearly running away from something. Since he was so well behaved and courteous, she would do all she could in her power to get Clark on his way again of running away. She got the wheelbarrow and put an old blanket in it that Clark could sit on. When she got back, Clark was standing against his truck and was crying like a baby, which was an unexpected sight to say the least. But the priority needed to be to get them both safely inside the house as fast as she could. "Okay, Clark, can you take a seat? Why did I have to end up here, of all places?" "Oh boy, that sounds like a long story that you can tell in the morning. But first things first, can you please sit down?" Clark started to sit down, but Betty realized she had to help because he was falling fast and didn't want him to hit the barrel too hard. Finally, he was in a position where she could start to push the wheelbarrow across the icy yard. He obviously wasn't too heavy because she made it to the front door without too much effort or slipping and got him up with his arm around her shoulder on the sofa behind her blankets that was her bed for the night. I'm gonna have to clean you up a little bit and put some bandages on you, I think. My head hurts a bit. And then he was out again. She looked closer at his head and noticed that he wasn't bleeding anymore, but dried blood that ran down from where his hairline started, which was dirty blonde. She looked over the rest of him and didn't see any other visible wounds or blood through the navy flannel shirt and jeans. Before she washed his face, she was going to get the brown tied tied up boots off him. They took some time and effort, but she finally got the boots off. That was almost more exhausting than getting him into the house. Then she got a bowl and filled it with warm water, found a rag, some cotton balls, and some peroxide to make sure that his wound was clean. First, she gently washed off all the dry blood with the rag and warm water. Warm water. She didn't know how old he was, but he was obviously young. His face was not exactly handsome, but it wasn't ugly either, and it looked like he hadn't shaved in a couple of days by how rough his cheek was near his jawline. She started to wonder what brought this young man, Clark, to crash his truck into her tree on this icy night. Finally, she put a bit of peroxide in the cotton ball, gently rubbed onto the small flesh wound near the top of his head. As soon as she touched it, he jumped and shouted, "Ouch! What the hell are you doing?" "Relax. It will only sting for a second," she said in a gentle tone. Clark put his head back down and was out again in a matter of seconds. She was not going to touch him any more, or did she want to, but just found a heavy coat to put over him from one of the closets. She said she sat down on her blankets in front of the fire again for the night, with the young man on the couch behind her. And that was the end of chapter 1.